There was a time when silence was not rare, not sacred, just ordinary. It was part of the landscape of existence. People woke to the slow rhythm of dawn, to the sound of birds, or the low hum of a distant river. The world moved at the pace of breath, not at the speed of data. Conversations had pauses, roads had distance, and in those pauses people thought, felt, and listened. But somewhere between the hum of electricity and the rise of screens, silence began to die. Not suddenly, slowly, invisibly, replaced by constant background noise. The music that never stops, the buzz of notifications, the murmur of voices, even when no one is speaking. The modern world does not like silence, it mistrusts it. It treats it like an error that must be fixed. A quiet room feels like something's wrong with the speakers. A moment without distraction feels like failure. A pause in productivity, a waste of time. So we fill every gap. We talk even when we have nothing to say. We scroll when there's nothing to see. We listen to noise not because we enjoy it, but because we can't bear the sound of nothing. And yet, beneath that noise, beneath the endless stream of chatter, there's something we've lost. Something we used to know instinctively, that silence is not emptiness. It's space, it's presence. It's the soil in which awareness grows, but we no longer live in that space. Now, even when the world around us is still, the noise continues inside us, the internal monologue that never shuts up, the half-formed anxieties, the background static of unfinished thoughts. We carry the noise everywhere we go. We've come to mistake silence for loneliness when in truth it's the opposite. Silence is what allows you to meet yourself, and that is precisely why it is so frightening. Because what if you don't like who you find there? What if beneath all the talking and typing and scrolling, there's an emptiness you can't explain? That's what silence reveals, not peace, at least not at first, but the truth of how chaotic the mind has become. Try this. Sit for 5 minutes without touching your phone, without music, without movement. Watch how quickly discomfort sets in. Watch how the mind panics, desperate to reach for stimulation, for escape. The silence feels heavy, almost hostile. But it isn't hostile, it's honest. The noise we surround ourselves with isn't random. It's protection, a soft barrier between us and awareness. Because silence doesn't just remove distraction. It removes the illusions we live by. It makes us confront the small, inconvenient truths we spend our lives avoiding. That much of what we do is habit, not intention. That many of our beliefs are borrowed, not earned. That our days are loud precisely because our hearts are quiet. We live in a time where even peace must be packaged and sold back to us. Meditation apps, calming playlists, sound therapy videos, all designed to help us relax without ever truly being still. We've turned silence into another product to consume when its real power was never in consumption but in confrontation. Ancient thinkers understood this. The desert monks sought silence not for comfort but for clarity. The Stoics spoke of tranquility as the highest strength, the ability to remain calm not because the world is quiet but because the mind is. Even the scientists and artists of the past, Newton under his tree, Beethoven in his deafness, Van Gogh among the fields, all touched that same space of aloneness, where the mind finally becomes clear enough to see. But now, silence feels unnatural. We fill every gap, even in thought. We listen to music while walking, watch videos while eating, scroll through voices while falling asleep. We've surrounded ourselves with sound to the point that our very sense of self depends on it. Without noise, many people feel invisible, as if silence erases them. They equate silence with absence, when in truth, it's presence in its purest form. We are not afraid of silence because it's empty. We are afraid because it's alive. It breathes, it reflects, it waits. It holds up a mirror to the mind, and that reflection can be uncomfortable. It reminds us how little of our life we actually live consciously, how often we drift through days, reacting instead of choosing. And yet, despite all this, silence never fights back. It doesn't demand, it doesn't beg for attention. It simply waits, patient, eternal, unchanging, like an ocean beneath a storm. And if one day you dare to stop running, to sit quietly and listen, you might hear it again. That ancient sound of nothing, which is not nothing at all. It's the beginning of everything. Silence isn't just dying around us, it's dying inside us. Even when the world is quiet, most people carry a storm in their heads. Thoughts pile up like traffic. Every worry honks for attention. Every memory loops endlessly, replaying itself like a broken song. The noise outside has simply trained us to ignore the noise within. The moment you turn off the music, it begins, that restless hum of inner commentary. You start remembering things you said wrong, things you didn't do, things that could go wrong tomorrow. The mind runs, not because it wants to, but because it no longer knows how to stop. We call it thinking, but it's not. It's looping, a constant rehearsal of fear and regret, dressed up as productivity. It keeps you busy enough to avoid stillness, but not deep enough to find peace. And the truth is, we don't just fear silence, we fear what silence reveals. When the world goes quiet, the self gets loud. The uneasiness you feel when everything stops moving isn't boredom, it's withdrawal. Withdrawal from stimulation, from the constant feeding of the senses. The modern mind has become dependent on input the way a body depends on caffeine. Without it, the system shakes. You can see it everywhere. People checking their phones in elevators, turning on a podcast the moment they wake up, keeping a TV on for background noise. They say it helps them relax, but that's not what's happening. It's not comfort, it's avoidance. We fill the silence because silence asks questions we'd rather not answer. Why am I doing this? Am I happy? Who am I when I stop performing? Those questions are heavy, and they echo. So we drown them out with sound, with conversation, with distraction, with motion. The noise becomes armor. But here's the cruel paradox. The more we run from silence, the louder the noise within becomes. Because what you avoid doesn't disappear. It waits. Every ignored thought, every suppressed emotion, every unprocessed pain, all of it lingers, humming beneath the surface, leaking into your mood, your energy, your relationships. This is why so many people feel exhausted without knowing why. They aren't tired from work. They're tired from carrying the weight of their own unlistened thoughts. You can hear it in the way people talk, quickly, defensively, as if they're afraid of the gaps between sentences. You can see it in the way they scroll, desperate for something new to react to, terrified of the quiet space between moments. The mind, left unattended, becomes a noisy house with every light on. Silence, then, is not a luxury. It's maintenance. It's the act of turning off one room at a time until you can finally rest. But here's what no one tells you. The noise inside is not the enemy. It's communication. It's the sound of your own mind begging to be heard. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to tell you something. The thoughts that rise in silence are not random. They are messages from your body. You are tired. From your heart, you are lonely. From your conscience, you are pretending. We drown them out because they demand honesty, but honesty is what heals. Learning to sit in silence is not about silencing the mind. It is about listening to it without running. To sit still while the noise unfolds and realize it's just noise. It's not you, it's what you've collected. Fears, expectations, unfinished sentences from a life lived too fast. And when you finally stop trying to suppress it, something unexpected happens. The noise begins to fade on its own. Beneath the chaos, there's a quieter layer of awareness, steady, calm, watchful. It's been there the whole time, hidden under the volume of your own distractions. That awareness is you, the part that doesn't shout, doesn't panic, doesn't chase, the part that simply observes. Silence is not the absence of thought. It's the discovery of the one who's watching the thoughts. But to reach that part of yourself, you must first walk through the noise. You must let the mind empty its clutter, let the static burn itself out, let every echo finish its sentence. And when it finally does, when the noise runs out of energy and the last thought dissolves, what remains is to emptiness. It's peace. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on the world being quiet, only on you remembering how to be. We live in a time where movement has become a religion. Every second must be filled. Every pause must be justified. Every breath must serve a purpose. The world worships velocity. The faster you move, the more valuable you seem. We rush through meals, conversations, and even emotions. We've built a society that celebrates exhaustion and calls it success. Stillness used to be strength. Now it's suspicious. When someone chooses quiet, we wonder what's wrong with them. When someone disappears for a few days, we assume crisis. The idea of being unreachable feels almost subversive, as if choosing to rest were an act of rebellion. Our culture has turned busyness into virtue. We measure worth by output. We equate noise with relevance. We've learned to fear the simple act of doing nothing, not because it's wasteful, but because it reminds us that our value has been defined by motion. Children are trained early for this rhythm. Schools reward constant performance. Adults continue the pattern. The endless emails, the self-improvement routines, the hustle mindset that leaves no room for pause. We live by calendars, notifications, reminders, all devices designed to ensure we never stop. And the strange irony is that we call this progress. We say the world is advancing, when in truth it's just accelerating. Acceleration gives the illusion of direction, but speed alone is not movement toward meaning. It's just motion without depth. In this endless sprint, we've replaced presence with productivity. We chase goals we don't understand, build lives we barely inhabit, fill silence with noise so we can pretend we're alive. Even our rest is infected by performance. We post vacations, schedule relaxation, turn meditation into a trend. The world tells us to unplug, but only so we can recharge for more activity. We rest to return to motion, not to recover from it. There's a quiet kind of slavery in that, one we've learned to celebrate. We believe we're free because we're moving, when in fact we're being carried by currents we didn't create. And the faster we go, the less we notice who's steering. Behind this addiction to movement lies a deeper fear. The fear of stopping. Because when you stop, the questions you've been outrunning finally catch up. What am I doing this for? Who am I trying to impress? What if all this effort isn't leading anywhere? The culture of constant motion keeps us safe from those questions. It tells us that movement itself is meaning. But speed without reflection isn't progress. It's panic in disguise. Every generation believes it's moving forward because it's moving faster. But forward to what? Technology grows, convenience multiplies, yet anxiety rises, meaning shrinks, attention fractures. The machine hums louder each year, and no one remembers how to switch it off. To sit still in such a world is to break an unspoken rule. To stop is to defy the god of busyness. But only by stopping can you see the truth, that most of what we call urgency is artificial, that the deadlines are invented, that the noise is profitable. A calm mind doesn't buy as much. A still person is harder to control. That's why silence feels dangerous to a system that thrives on motion. The world keeps you moving not to help you achieve, but to keep you from asking why you're moving at all. Because the moment you stop, really stop, and look around, you might notice that the race never had a finish line. And maybe then, you'll do something truly revolutionary. You'll step out of it, you'll pause, you'll breathe, and you'll remember that life was never meant to be a sprint. It was meant to be felt. For most of human history, silence wasn't something people had to find. It was simply there, in the rhythm of nature, in the slow turning of days. People lived closer to the earth, to the pulse of seasons, to the quiet of night. And within that quiet, something sacred grew: understanding. Our ancestors, philosophers, monks, wanderers, poets, all knew what modern society has forgotten: that stillness isn't emptiness, it's perception, sharpened, it's awareness, refined. It's where thought matures into wisdom. In stillness, the mind finally catches up to the heart. In silence, the soul begins to speak. Ancient traditions revered it. The Stoics believed tranquility was strength, the ability to remain unmoved by chaos. Buddha found enlightenment not in words, but in silence beneath a tree. Mystics across ages, from Rumi to Lao Tzu, taught that divine truth doesn't shout, it whispers. And you can't hear a whisper when the world around you is screaming. Even in science and art, stillness has been the birthplace of revelation. Newton didn't discover gravity in a crowd. Beethoven composed masterpieces in the isolation of his deafness. Van Gogh painted peace into chaos by sitting for hours among the quiet fields. The greatest ideas, the deepest art, the purest insight, all emerge not from motion, but from stillness. Yet in our time, stillness has been rebranded as laziness, silence as weakness. We've traded reflection for reaction, wisdom for information, depth for volume. We collect data instead of understanding. We move endlessly and call it progress, but progress without awareness is just movement without meaning. Stillness terrifies us because it holds a mirror to everything we've become. It shows us how much noise we mistake for thought, how much distraction we call purpose. But if you sit long enough, if you let the body soften, the breath settle, the mind slow, something miraculous happens. The chaos begins to clear. The fog lifts. You start noticing the small things again, the faint hum of the world, the weight of your breath, the subtle rhythm of your heartbeat. You begin to sense life as it truly is, not as headlines, not as noise, but as presence. In stillness, you remember that existence itself is not loud. The stars don't make sound as they burn. The earth doesn't shout as it turns. Even your own heart beats quietly, yet it sustains your entire being. That's the paradox. Everything essential is silent. But silence has never been fashionable. It doesn't sell. It doesn't entertain. It doesn't compete. It simply is. And that's why it's powerful, because it can't be manipulated. Stillness is not passivity, it's clarity, it's not retreat, it's return to awareness, to choice, to truth. When you reclaim stillness, you reclaim sovereignty over your mind. You begin to see how much of what you thought was urgent was unnecessary. You start making decisions not out of fear, but from understanding. And in that quiet space, life becomes something else. Not a race to win, but an experience to feel. Stillness doesn't fix the world, it reveals it. And in seeing it clearly, maybe for the first time, you start to live consciously, not as a collection of reactions, but as a presence. Because peace isn't found by escaping noise, it is found by remembering that silence never left. It's been waiting all along, beneath the static of the modern mind, patient as breath, vast as time. Silence was never lost. We just forgot how to recognize it. We buried it under the layers of sound, opinion, urgency, and fear, the constant hum of a civilization terrified of stopping. Yet even now, it waits beneath everything, beneath your routines, beneath your thoughts, beneath the noise that fills your days. If you close your eyes, you can still feel it, a stillness underneath it all. Here it's the same quiet that existed long before your first word, long before cities, before machines, before memory. It is older than language, older than time. It doesn't ask for you to find it. It only waits for you to remember. In a world that measures worth in speed and sound, silence has become rebellion. But maybe rebellion is exactly what's needed, because silence isn't passivity. It's resistance to noise, to manipulation, to the world's demand that you react instead of reflect. To sit in silence today is to reclaim your mind from the machinery of distraction. It's to say, I will not be carried by the noise. When you stop filling every second, life begins to expand. The small things, a flicker of light on a wall, the shape of your breath, the warmth of a moment, begin to mean something again. The rush of the world slows enough for you to feel its texture. And as it slows, something miraculous happens. The mind softens, the heart steadies. The body remembers what peace feels like. This is the quiet humanity has always needed, not as luxury, but as medicine. Because silence is not the absence of life. It's where life speaks most honestly. It's where you can finally hear your own soul whisper, you are here, you are alive, you are enough. The world will keep getting louder. It will keep trying to pull you back into the current. More messages, more opinions, more urgency. But you can step out of it. You can walk away from the roar and back into the pulse of stillness that never left you. When you do, you start to live differently. You stop chasing and start witnessing. You stop performing and start existing. You start seeing that most of what we call life happens not in motion, but in the pause between breaths. That's where truth lives. That's where meaning hides. That's where you and the quiet, conscious, unhurried you have been waiting. The sacred sound of nothing isn't silence at all. It's the hum of awareness, vast, endless, alive. And when you finally hear it, you'll understand. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more listeners. So stop. Be still. Listen. The silence is calling you home. There comes a moment, usually after the noise has worn you down, when you realize that what you're missing isn't more stimulation, more information, or more company. It's quiet. Real, unfiltered, uncomfortable quiet. The kind that doesn't entertain or distract, but simply is. Reclaiming silence doesn't mean retreating from life, it means returning to it. It's remembering that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of awareness. It's where thoughts stop shouting and finally start listening. For most people, silence feels unbearable at first. The moment you turn off the background hum, the inner one gets louder. Every unfinished thought, every emotion you've buried comes rushing back. It's like walking into a room you've avoided cleaning for years. But if you stay, if you resist the urge to run, you begin to see that silence isn't chaos. It's cleansing. There are many ways to return to it. You don't have to meditate on a mountain or escape into nature, though that helps. You can start by simply pausing, before replying, before scrolling, before reacting. Let a little stillness enter your day like a breath of air. Turn off the music while driving. Eat without checking your phone. Sit by the window and listen, not to podcasts or playlists, but to the faint, forgotten sounds of life itself. The hum of wind, the heartbeat of the city, the quiet murmur of your own breathing. At first, your mind will rebel. It will reach for distraction. But slowly, something inside you begins to unclench. You start noticing details, textures, shadows, sensations that were always there but drowned out by your haste. Time stretches, awareness widens, and somewhere in that widening, peace enters, not dramatic or sudden but steady, like light returning after a storm. Silence becomes your teacher. It starts revealing things. That much of what you chase doesn't matter, that most of what you fear never happens. That presence, simple, patient presence, is the only thing that ever felt real. The great paradox of silence is that it isn't empty at all. It's full of meaning, of possibility, of the pulse of everything that lives. In the stillness, the mind becomes transparent, and you can finally see the layers of your own life clearly. What's genuine, what's noise, what needs to stay, what must go. We talk often about changing the world, but few realize that the most radical act left is to change the rhythm of your attention, to slow down, to listen deeply, to live deliberately in a culture that runs on reflex. When you reclaim silence, you reclaim the ability to think your own thoughts, feel your own emotions, and hear your own voice, the one that never really left you, just got buried under all the volume. This is how clarity begins, not in shouting, not in certainty, but in quiet, because only when the noise fades can truth emerge, simple and undeniable. And maybe that is the lesson we've forgotten, that silence isn't a void to escape from, but the ground on which all meaning rests. It's where creativity is born, where love deepens, where awareness sharpens. It's not the opposite of life, it's its origin. Reclaiming silence is reclaiming yourself, and when you finally sit in it, without fear, without need, without rush, you realize the world never stopped speaking. You just stopped hearing it. The trees were always whispering. The sky was always breathing. The quiet was never gone. It was waiting, patiently, for you to come home.